Did you get to see any of Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling over the weekend? It dropped with 2 shows on Saturday and Sunday night. They put out a graphic promoting that both nights were sellouts. Did not see a number. When TNA ran, the last time they ran back-to-back nights, they did about 600 each night at St. Clair College. I didn't get a strong grasp of the audience watching it, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was like in that range or maybe under. But I thought watching this, it was very interesting to see it. First of all, like if you take away the branding, you would have been able to convince someone this was a TNA show, and it looked, felt, sounded, everything felt like the TNA production of things. And what this was this is Scott D'Amore's vision of TNA, only instead of a WWE working relationship, he's got one with AEW. And that's what this kind of felt like. And I thought the star of these 2 nights, to no surprise, was Konosuke Takeshita, who had these 2 main events were, I thought, sensational matches that he had with Speedball Mike Bailey and Josh Alexander the second night.
Yeah, 100%. You know, and maybe just even using this conversation as a barometer of success. You know, we're talking about a promotion's first weekend, first 2 shows, and the fact that we're talking about it, and the fact that I've seen considerable buzz about these 2 matches in particular, that's a huge accomplishment for somebody just launching, isn't it? You know, I think the card quality was up there, and I think, you know, created good enough anticipation from the moment that it was announced. When you got to the show production wise was of a pretty high quality. You know, when we're talking about indie, like you mentioned, John, I think it was very reminiscent of, you know, like what you would kind of see for an Impact. But I was impressed that they got like, you know, video packages, and like just even having something like having instant replay. I don't think that's necessarily a small feat, you know, for somebody that's just kind of up and running. But of course you have like Mackenzie Mitchell, you've got Mauro Ranallo, like, you know, high quality level broadcasters that are attached to the product. It gave it a very, I would say, high level production feel for something that is, you know, just on Triller, for instance.
I mean, at the very least, you come out of this, and it, you know, Scott D'Amore has, you know, not really divulged too much of what the long-term play is. Like, he's mentioned the fact of wanting to run Maple Leaf Gardens next year, and, you know, you're looking for, first of all, you get 2 nights, and now you have a concept that you can bring to potential advertisers. To, like, I don't know if TV is something that's in their future.
Does it need to be? Like, well, what does TV necessarily do for a promotion like this?
The question is, like, what is the business plan for this? Is it to just run your super indie a couple times a year? Because these are not cheap shows. Like, to produce, even with your working relationships, like, this is, like, these were, like, you know, high production shows, like not WWE level, but right at your TNA level, and not even that far off from like your, like, this talent roster was just from top to bottom. Like, you had some really stellar names attached to this, say nothing of, you know, Mauro Ranallo is not doing this as some favor just to fly to Windsor for the weekend. And I thought Mauro added, I thought he was greatly missed on the wrestling commentary side of things. And I think he was just took to right back into the flow of things, calling pro wrestling. I know that there were a number of performers on the shows. Like, it was a big deal to them, the fact that Mauro was doing this show. Like, he added that kind of credibility for talents that wanted to work these shows as well. So I thought he did a really great job with Don Callis. And yeah, I think that in terms of you do have a hook, like, you have this very heavy Canadian branding that you can take to different markets. And I think a first time you run in Toronto, you can maybe play off some of that nostalgia. But, you know, Maple Leaf Gardens, we're talking like generations removed from where that was sort of a mecca of pro wrestling. And it's a far cry from what it once was. It's now underneath a grocery store.
It's above.
Is it above?
It? Okay. Yeah. Madame Athletic is above the Loblaws. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I grew up in the city. Like, the name Maple Leaf Wrestling doesn't mean a whole lot to me, but there is, I would say, a real space for a super indie in this city, maybe even in this country. And that's kind of the feel you got from watching the show. Now, it was like, obviously a lot of like the Scott D'Amore connections, and a lot of guys that you might even still currently see on TNA Wrestling. But what I think this show came across by the end, especially, was that it felt like an interesting little kind of crossroads where an New Japan talent can and an AEW talent can coexist with Impact talent, and maybe some random people showing up like a Ricochet, for instance. So that all was very exciting, and if they can maintain that quality and standard throughout their next shows, that's, I think, going to receive a lot of attention from people here.
Yeah, it was worth bringing up that they both nights aired commercials for Bound for Glory, and you had Morrow running down the lineups for Dynamite coming up this week as well. So you obviously had that that relationship and cross promotion, and it does somewhat blow my mind that here you have Scott D'Amore, who has this non-compete clause in place that ended up with him and TNA working this out so he could do these shows with TNA talent a week before Bound for Glory, where you want people to buy this show and a week later buy your show, and forget about the fact that in the market, like, Bound for Glory is taking place. It's 25 minutes away from St. Clair College where this is playing. So it's like you're going to probably have quite the Venn diagram of fans that are going to both. But it really does tell you the kind of different approach, because that would be all the reasons you have a no compete, is that something like that could not happen to compete against your own. But there is clearly a different philosophy that these sides have now, especially on the TNA side, that they were willing to allow their talent to work here and work with Scott D'Amore instead of treat this as a show that was competitive to their own big show coming up this weekend. So
would you say it took attention away from an interest away from Bound for Glory? Or,
I'm just saying that people's financial resources are not infinite, and if you spent $30 on a pay-per-view this weekend and then you're being asked to spend another 30 next weekend, and the same with you are basically in the same market. Windsor and Detroit are like, these two venues are right next to each other. Sure. It's just like there's a reason, like, you want you don't want to burden your fan base, and I can see a lot of people that looked at this lineup, and this is a really impressive lineup. I think Bound for Glory has a very good lineup on Saturday, but there's it's that's the whole battle for finding your own audience for your shows.
If you like this video, consider joining our Patreon, the Post Wrestling Cafe. Multiple bonus podcasts every week, ad-free shows, and access to our full archive. Otherwise, a like and subscribe is much appreciated. Thank you for watching.